This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
They trifled with us. We blew them away.
Is the world going to accept that Iran now controls an international waterway?
Today was a blow to the Democrats in Virginia.
The law is very clear. The Constitution was not followed.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Love Tap, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. As Washington waits for Tehran to respond to a peace proposal, skirmishes seem to be increasing despite an official ceasefire.
They trifled with us today. We blew them away.
President Trump downplaying yesterday's clash between U.S. and Iranian forces in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Iran firing missiles and drones at a trio of U.S. warships. The U.S. responding with attacks against several small Iranian attack boats. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says a fundamental issue here is Iran trying to establish control over the strait.
Is the world going to accept that Iran now controls an international waterway? Because if the world is prepared to accept that, then be ready. Because there's like 10 other countries that are going to start doing the same thing in their international waterways, in international waterways near their countries.
Retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg tells Fox News the U.S. needs to stop treading lightly with Iran.
We need to go in and put everything on their side. This is what we're going to do. We're going to break your back. This does not mean we invade Tehran. That would be foolish, and the president knows that. But you got to make sure that we're not getting played by Arachi, their foreign minister. He will try to play us.
Elsewhere, we've got a new ceasefire, a 3-day one between Russia and Ukraine. It starts tomorrow, ends Monday. It coincides with Russia's Victory Day. The president says it also includes a prison swap of 1,000 each from Russia and Ukraine. Next to politics, a redistricting free-for-all went Republicans' way yesterday, especially in Virginia, the state Supreme Court rebuffing a Democrat-heavy redistricting plan. Loyola law professor Lori Levinson.
Today was a blow to the Democrats in Virginia.
Republican State Senator Ryan McDougal brought the lawsuit.
The law is very clear. The Constitution was not followed.
Democrats were seeking a map designed to give the party up to 4 new House seats. And things got a bit wild in Tennessee yesterday when Republican lawmakers carved up the only majority black district and signed a new congressional map into law.
House Bill 7003, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled.
A Memphis Democrat went so far as to call for the city to leave the state of Tennessee over that decision, critics labeling the move, quote, Jim Crow 2.0. Still tracking down possible victims and carriers in that cruise ship hantavirus outbreak, NBC's Danielle Humanjan reports people who got off the ship early are now spreading it out across the globe.
Singapore confirming it's monitoring 2 passengers, but some positive news. The Dutch flight attendant hospitalized with symptoms yesterday, now testing negative for the virus.
Michelle Palmer of New York is vacationing on Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where the ship is set to arrive this weekend. She says it needs to be taken seriously.
There are ways to handle these kinds of situations. We can't just ignore them and let them float around for, till we figure something out.
So far, there are 3 known fatalities in that hantavirus outbreak. Back in the U.S., some positive economic news to end the week. Jobs, lots of new jobs.
These are 2 months in a row of absolutely blockbuster numbers.
The director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, on Fox. Most analysts were predicting about 55, maybe 60,000 new jobs to be created in April versus 178,000 the month prior. Instead, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says non-farm payrolls jumped by another 115,000 last month. President Trump today also hosting a Mother's Day themed gathering at the White House.
I got to know so many of you during my first days of running. I got to know you and I got to love you. We want to thank you for being here. Mother's Day is one of the great days. I always think so fondly of my mother. I had a wonderful mother.
The guests were mothers who either lost children to killings by illegal immigrants or those who lost military service members.
Mulder, the truth is out there, but so are lies.
The TV show X-Files was fiction, but is there any truth to UFOs and aliens? The Pentagon declassifying UFO files now accessible to all Americans. The Department of War releasing never-before-seen files, it says, related to possible alien and extraterrestrial life. Now, what are Christians to make of all that? Pastor and author Joseph Zupitz was part of a meeting reportedly involving government officials and selected clergy members ahead of the release. He tells CBN.
They brought out data to say most of what people are seeing is advanced technology, but there's a 10% window that is legitimately something else. The bottom line is the answer is still the same. Jesus Christ is Lord. UFOs and aliens, they don't like the name of Jesus. It's something that we need to be standing on and continuing to drive our faith into.
The department says it will be releasing new materials on a rolling basis. While the National Retail Federation is projecting record spending on this Mother's Day, $38 billion worth. But what do moms really want?
I would rather go to the spa by myself, but yeah.
Leave me alone. Quiet, rest, being around the people I love, and eating something good for dinner.
Just leave me alone. Still to come here on the 5 o'clock report, a recap of our top regional stories and highlights from today's Capital Connection. Checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Some Chautauqua County, New York residents say plans for a data center on the site of a former golf course is out of bounds. Since the Portland, New York Town Board gave initial approval to plans for the data center where the Sugar Hill course once welcomed golfers, Portland resident Michelle Patterson tells WKBW a data center on that site is not welcomed. She organized concerned citizens into what's called the Grape Belt Community Group with a single goal in mind.
How can we, as a community group, work with them to find alternative projects, alternative options that are more sustainable?
Portland resident Brian Oakey adds,
look at the area. People come here for the environment, for the grapes. When you're talking about a small community that really relies heavily on tourism and the quality of life we have here, it's a mismatch.
Concerns about having a data center nearby include noise levels from power and cooling equipment. There's a bill in the works in the state Senate in Albany that would revamp sex offender laws. It's already passed the Assembly, but tucked inside a provision that would allow level 1 sex offenders to remain hidden to the public. Onondaga County Sheriff Toby Shelley tells CNY Central the bill's too weak.
My opinion is anytime one of these predators preys on a child like that, they should automatically be visible on the registry.
Sheriff Shelley says he's working with lawmakers to make sure the Senate version has some stronger wording.
We're going to keep pushing what we already proposed, trying to get that level 1 sex registry, get the act itself modified to expose those level 1s.
Also included in Assembly Bill 8930, risk assessment tools that rely on data and statistics to determine a sex offender's likelihood of reoffending. Next, a couple of stories directly impacting Pennsylvania drivers. Drivers in 25 of PA's 67 counties have to get annual emissions testing for their vehicles. There's now an effort in the state capitol to do away with all that. Republican State Senator Wayne Langerholt tells KYW.
We talk about affordability often in this General Assembly. This is one distinct measure that we can lean on to help with our residents in the Commonwealth. Again, this would eliminate emissions testings in all counties.
Senate Bill 1298 approved earlier this week.
This bill will save vehicle owners money in their pockets from an outdated, archaic emissions testing program.
State Senator Lisa Boscola says those tests that cost $40 are $40 too much.
The people I represent are still being asked to pay every year for a testing program that, by the data, serves virtually no purpose.
The state disagrees. They say the emissions inspections do improve the air quality in PA. Langerholt's bill now headed to the state house. State lawmakers also considering suspending the state gas tax as prices keep climbing nationwide. Right now, $4.64 a gallon on average in the Keystone State, frustrating drivers.
I would love to get a full tank. Unfortunately, I don't have $80 to spare.
I don't know what a full tank of gas looks like at this moment.
Even just driving around the city wanting to run errands, stop and go traffic, it uses a lot of gas, and it is really starting to add up.
Republican House member Abby Major has a bill for a 6-month holiday on the 58-cent a gallon tax. Democrat Boscola is calling for a 60-day holiday. Pitt political science professor Dr. Chris Bonneau.
It's an easy political sell. Who doesn't want lower prices, particularly with gas prices being as high as they are?
Gas tax holidays are already in place in other states, but with time limits. Up next, highlights from today's Capital Connection as our Bob Price tackles the big topics in Albany and Harrisburg with Jason McGuire from New York Families and Michael Gear with the Pennsylvania Family Institute. They kick things off with Jason's take on the drama surrounding the New York State budget.
When it comes to the New York State budget, nothing happens until everything happens. And yesterday it seemed like a whole lot happened all all at once. Governor Hochul goes out there, announces this deal on a $268 billion budget, and then within a matter of hours, the Assembly Speaker says, hold on a minute, there is no deal. So I'll ask you, is there a deal or isn't there on the budget in New York right now?
This is becoming a bit of a pattern in New York where the governor comes out and by herself announces the deal has been cut with the legislature, only to have the legislative members, the leaders, come out and say, no, there is no deal yet. I think this is becoming a tool for the governor to try to ratchet down conversation, and it may be an indication that we are now nearing the end of negotiations, but we're not quite there yet. So Speaker Hastie was a little hot under the collar, trying to push back and maintain that he has not yet signed off on the deal the governor is seeking. From my perspective, New York does not yet have a budget.
Yeah, and it should be worth mentioning, this now is the latest state budget in 16 years, and Governor Hochul never had an on-time budget in the 4 years that she's been governor. Moving on to Harrisburg, Michael, big news. Senate committee this week voting on a bill that would ban taxpayer dollars, Medicaid dollars, from funding sex reassignment operations on minors. We'll see where this goes in the full Senate and then the House, but got to ask you, how widespread of a practice is this in the Commonwealth?
Well, it's pretty widespread. The bill you're talking about, Bob, is Senate Bill 1321, which is sponsored by Senator Chris Gebhardt of Lebanon County. It's critical for Pennsylvania families because, according to our research at Pennsylvania Family Institute with Right to Know requests, our Commonwealth has spent over $31 million over the years in taxpayer dollars on these sex-rejecting drugs, hormones, and procedures for minors, with more than 6,200 minor Pennsylvania children put on this path. That's exploded from just about 100 back in 2015. Children's Hospital in Philadelphia is one of the worst offenders in the country for these kinds of so-called interventions. So we're encouraging people to support this bill to protect Pennsylvania children and to stop forcing taxpayers to fund these harmful experiments. Folks who are listening or on our email list can watch for an alert that we'll be sending out Monday so they can take action on this bill and contact their senators.
Gotcha. I know it probably stands a good chance in the Senate. We'll see in the House. Is the governor going to veto this if it were to ever reach his desk?
If I were to predict, he'd be under pressure from Democrats to do that. That's sort of been his MO on any of these bills that seek to protect children, sadly.
Well, redistricting's all the rage, Jason. We saw Joe Morelli in Rochester meet with the governor this week about redrawing New York's political lines. Democrats already have a 19-7 advantage when it comes to the congressional delegation in New York. So I got to ask you, what is the motivation here for doing this in New York State?
Well, I think the motivation is simply raw power. Those in power want to keep it, and those who don't have it want to attain it in the government circles. And I think the Democrats see themselves as being pushed out and wanting to retain just that control over the executive office, the presidency, let alone Congress. So they're just trying to draw the maps to be able to make sure that they have that power once again in future elections. But we are a representative form of government, and I think both parties need to remember that we just simply let it play out in the normal census process. So let that redrawing of the lines occur after the census every 10 years. And then whoever wins those seats, let it play out and give the people a chance to vote for their representatives in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it seems like we're going down a rabbit trail here with this mid-decade redistricting. Hopefully it'll stop. We'll do it the way it's intended to happen. Michael, primary day is a week from Tuesday. Hard to believe it's already here. There's about a dozen states, I believe, that have a closed primary, meaning unaffiliated voters cannot take part. Pennsylvania is one of those states. You support the closed primary system. Explain to our audience why it should stay the way it is.
I think primaries exist so that members of each political party can choose their own nominees. There's some ideological component of choosing which party you're going to be part of and hoping your parties will stand for the things that you stand for. And when you open it up and let unaffiliated voters who don't really necessarily have those kinds of commitments get involved in voting or switching sides or those sorts of things to pick candidates, you weaken the whole system and weaken the ability for the parties to actually choose people who stand for those values. I think Pennsylvania should keep its closed primary system. If you want to vote in the primary, register with the party whose nominee you want to help choose.
Thank you, gentlemen. You can hear the entire feature and all of our Family Life original news features at Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, and FamilyLife.org. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Mothers play one of the most influential roles in a family. Hi, I'm Rob West with another Faith and Finance Minute. Well, as I'm sure you're aware, Sunday is Mother's Day. And in my experience, when you find a home marked by wise money habits and open-handed generosity, you'll often find a mother quietly shaping hearts behind the scenes. In 2 Timothy 1:5, Paul writes to Timothy, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. It's a reminder that a mother's influence is powerful and lasting. If you've been blessed by a godly mom, let her know what she means to you this weekend. And thank the Lord for moms everywhere. Where would we be without them? We can help you learn to manage your money according to biblical principles when you download the free FaithFi app. You'll find it on our website at faithfi.com.
Thanks, Rob. Finally at 5, her name is Nova, and even though she's just 4 years old, they're calling her Supernova. That's because a few weeks ago, the tot was with her grandmother when the elderly woman suffered a serious fall, cut her head. An overwhelming situation for many of us, especially a youngster, but not for Nova, who had the wherewithal to quickly go to a neighbor's house and explain exactly what had happened.
It was bleeding back of her head.
And she was bleeding on the back of her head?
Yeah.
Was that scary? Yeah.
The neighbor called 911, and long story short, Grandma is now okay, and lots of folks are mighty proud of young Nova, including her mom, who tells KGW,
What 4-year-old knows how to do that, you know? There's no words I could put on how I felt with that moment coming home and hearing from the officer of how great of a job that she did. What parent could, there's no words besides just being grateful.
Nova's been nominated for a Community Life-Saving Award. Beaverton Police saying, quote, Nova demonstrated an incredible level of bravery and awareness, especially for someone so young. 4-year-old Nova, a budding superstar in Beaverton, Oregon. And that's the world we live in for Friday, May 8th, 2026. Thank you again for joining us. Have a blessed weekend. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.